Hey everyone, and welcome to Webflow. I'm going to run you through the interface really quick so that you're familiar with the layout of our tools and everything that is going on here. And let's start from the left to right. In the left upper hand corner, we see the Webflow logo, which is also our link to go back to our dashboard. And I'll show you what the dashboard looks like at the end. Let's move to the right here. We see the page that we're currently on, which is the home page, will be displayed up here. And to the right of that, we have the toggle preview. So at any time, you can click this eyeball right here to see your site directly in the browser, what it looks like, without having to publish it. This will be real time what you got going on, and you can even click on this little up arrow here to remove the toolbar, which gives you a fuller view of what your site looks like. And that is the preview that you can use. And then to the right of that, we have our four different view modes, which we have a desktop, a tablet, and a mobile landscape and portrait. And we can toggle between these to see what our design looks like for the smaller viewports. And I want to point out that in Webflow, the workflow is laid out that any changes you make will cascade downwards. So if you know about the mobile first design rule of creating responsive designs, well, in Webflow, it is set up backwards so that any changes you make in the desktop will flow down to the tablet and phones. Let me give you an example here. If we have a really large type in the middle and we want to make it smaller for the tablet, it will only affect the tablet and the phones, but it will not change the larger type of the desktop. And same if we want to make the type even smaller for our phone landscape, it will only change it for the phone portrait, but not for the tablet and the desktop. So that is what it means to have all the changes cascade downwards. So we're going to use the workflow to work our way down from the desktop and then working our way back up from the phone when we're done. And then moving on to the right here, we have our undo and redo buttons, which will be the equivalent of Command Z and Command Shift Z to undo and redo. And then we also have a indicator here to show us that our changes have been saved. And if we lack internet connection, it will display a red Wi-Fi symbol here to show you that you don't have an internet connection and any changes that you make may not be saved, so don't close out of the browser or anything. And to the right of that, we have our export code button. So when the entire project is done and you have everything ready to be exported, and if you want to build out on the code on your own, then you will click this export. So here you have your HTML code, your CSS, and any images that you will be using will be stored here in their own folder, which you can then prepare and zip to send off to your client or a developer. And that is the export code function. And to the right of that, we have our publish button, which will publish our site onto the web. With one click, your site will be live. And that is the hallelujah moment of your site. So, and going back to the left here, the left panel, we see this plus button right here, and that is the add elements panel. And if we click A on our keyboard, that will bring out the add elements panel. And here we see the sections, the container, columns, all our layout elements. We have our basic elements of the div block, link blocks, and buttons, lists, and list items. Then we also have our typography elements, the headings, the paragraphs, text links, and regular text blocks. And below that we have our media, we have our images, we have our video, and because this is a drag and drop site builder, like it sounds, you can drag and drop this to build your site easily. And then we also have our video, so you can simply drag and drop that, or you can even just click on it to add it. So either drag and drop or click it, and then we have our forms, the form blocks, labels, we have our inputs, and everything related to forms will be in here. And at the bottom we have our widgets, we have tabs, nav bars, drop downs, and then we have our responsive slider, and we have our light boxes, and even a Google Map widget right here. And here's our Google Maps widget. As you can see, you can enter any location and it will show up in the map. Very handy. And last we have some social buttons that we can drag in, and we have our embed code. If we want to put in our own HTML code, any scripts or iframes will be done with this embed widget. And next in the left panel we have our add pages. So here we control everything page related. We see our home page right here, which we can drag to reorder. We can set this to be the current home page, and we can also go into the settings. Now if you look here, you can see that it says SEO title, so we can control everything for our SEO on individual pages. We can set the title, the description, and keywords in here in the settings for the page, and we can also do it for the overall site on the back end. In the dashboard we can set the SEO for the entire site and also do it on individual page levels here. And then we also have our duplicate button, so we can easily duplicate the page. We can delete it. We can set it to be the home page. If we don't want this page to be the home page, we can make another page really easily. Close and save, and we can create new folders for multiple pages if we want. And that is the page panel. And if we continue down here to the left, we see all of our different guides laying down here. We can hide element edges if we want. We can hide empty elements. For example, if we have a blank section right there, we can toggle that off so that we don't see any elements that don't contain anything. And then we also have our grid. We have our light grid overlay, and then our filled grid as well. And then we can hide the grid, and we can also enable X-ray mode. So if we have many contents going on, we can choose to see all of the wireframes, basically the boxes and outlines for all of the content. That can come in handy sometimes. And then we have a new button down here, which is video tutorials. And here you can find so much that you can learn about Webflow for doing different things. I recommend you check that out as well. And at the bottom we have the question mark, which will take you to the help center, video tutorials again, forum, and in the forum you can ask other community members for help and check out some cool tips and tricks. And then you also have FAQs in here. We have keyboard shortcuts, and we're going to check that out. Here we see all of the keyboard shortcuts that I will be using some of as I build this site. And yeah, it is recommended you check that out and get familiar with to save some time in your workflow. And last we have the contact us, which will send an email to Webflow support if you need any help. And if we see this gray toolbar on the bottom here, This is our breadcrumbs. And the breadcrumbs work like this. When you have a section and you have a container inside of the section, you will see that it's laying out breadcrumbs for you so that you can find your way back, really. And when we have our container selected, you can see that you can jump back to the section, or you can jump back to the body really easily, and that will come in handy too. So that's how the breadcrumbs work. And to the right, we have a duplicate button right here, so that we can quickly duplicate an object or just hit copy paste on our keyboard. And then we can also delete it or hit delete, of course. And the last panel on the right here, which is the magic, where the magic happens, beginning with the styling panel here. The keyboard shortcut for that is S on the keyboard. And the styling panel controls all of our classes. Here we set the classes. We can create subclasses to make different stylings. And we can even select the hover states from here. Hover and pressed and focused states for our buttons or any other clickable objects. And then below that we have our positioning palette, and here we control the positioning for all of our objects. We can toggle advanced settings on or off. We have the margin and paddings. We have height, width, clears, overflows, positions. Everything is in the positioning. And then we have the typography palette. Everything typography related is in here. Fonts, our font weights, italicization. I don't even know if that's a word. But then we have the colors. We have our pixel type size. We have our leading, tracking, and the different, we can set it to be centered or flush right or justified. And underlined or strike through, strike out, and capitalization. Then we also have direction, and we have our different kind of lists or bullet points down here. Everything typography related, and of course the advanced settings can be toggled on or off. And below that, our background palette. And here's where we add a background image to, we can add it to the background, we can add it to any div block, basically any element you can pretty much add a background to, add a gradient to as well, a linear or radial gradient. And then we can set the fill color to any color that we want, opacity. That is down in the background palette. Next we have the borders. We can set a border all around our objects, or on each individual side of an object. We can set it to be a solid, dashed, or dotted. And our width and colors, and also the radius. We can set it to the radius all around or on individual corners to make it softer on the corners. And all of that is done in the border palette. Next we have our shadows. Here we add our box shadows, our outer glows, our inner shadows and highlights, and text shadows, drop shadows, letterpress, and letterpress highlights. And another cool thing, let me show you, you can even add multiple shadows to create many different kind of stylings, and that is really cool. I recommend you check that out and play around with it to create some really unique typography treatments. And last in the styling panel we have our effects palette, and here's where you set the opacity of an object, or you can even set the transitions. You can create transitions between states, which I will do in this course, so that the hover states don't just switch on and off, but they can actually transition in and out. And all of that is done In here we have many different properties that you can choose from to animate or transition. And then we have our transforms down at the bottom so that we can transform, rotate, or stretch objects. Next, we have the settings panel. Clicking D on the keyboard. Here is where you'll find all the settings for your type, your blocks, your grids. Everything will be in the settings, and I will be using that a lot throughout the course. Next, we have the navigator, and here we see all of the layers that is going on in our workspace, similar to Photoshop. And you can even drag things around to reorder them. You can expand all or collapse all. All of the layers and navigation will be in here, and it is handy to place elements properly. And next we have our style manager, and here we'll be seeing all of our styles as we add on classes, basically. And in case we happen to delete any objects that we don't use anymore, we can come in here and clean up styles so that we remove those classes and keep the file size down low. And that is the style manager. And last but not least, we have the assets panel. And here is where we create symbols so that we can group objects, basically. Like, for example, I can group my entire nav bar to then copy paste it onto all of my pages, so that when I make a change on one page, I don't have to go back and make those changes to all of the pages, but it will be done throughout all of these symbols because it is a cloned object, basically. And last, below that, we have our interactions, and here is where I will add animations and different kind of interactions that are not the same as the button hovers, but these are all kinds of animations that we can go in. They can be triggered to many different things, like when a page loads, when a scroll is happening. So when you scroll down the page, elements can jump in and out. We can set it to click or hover triggers, tabs when the tabs are active, when the slides are active, when the nav bar opens, or when drop downs opens. Many different triggers, many different fun things you can do with the interactions. And I'm not going to forget that I'm going to show you the dashboard very quick here. So here's the dashboard for the site, basically the back end, where we can we see the title of it, and the settings we can set it to be the visibility, and the favicons and everything is in here. And backups are different backup versions of our site, so these will be auto-saved every 20th. Autosave will create a restore point for you, basically, that you can come back to, so you never lose anything that you build in Webflow. And then we have our hosting. You can add your own hosting custom domain, set password protection, and I believe these are pro features right here. And then your fonts, you can connect your own Sky fonts or Typekit in here. And all the forms, the form data will be submitted into here. The SEO, here's where you customize the SEO for your entire site. And also you can put in your Google Analytics and Google Site Verification here to get some insights, performance data about your site, and last, the custom code. And if you're not happy with your site, you can scrap it right here, or you can even transfer your site on pro accounts. You can transfer your site to another account user, or you can duplicate your entire site. You can share it and publish it as well. And with that said, now you have a complete overview of the entire interface of Webflow. And let's go ahead and get started by creating our site.